For 35 years, the official record said the match ended in a retirement. The ATP logged it, sealed it, moved on. Nobody asked why the betting line shifted 3 hours before the walk-off. But the ITF made sure you'd never learn what the tournament referee already knew, that the outcome had been agreed the night before the first ball was struck. That's the story they tell. It isn't what happened. Someone made sure you'd never hear this. Here's what the records were rewritten to hide. It's 1991. Tennis is going through a quiet revolution. The Berlin Wall has been down 2 years. Eastern European players who trained in state sports programs, who owed everything to governments now crumbling, are flooding the professional tour. They're ranked, they're dangerous, and they're broke. The tour at the time ran on a handshake economy. Prize money at mid-tier events barely covered travel. A fourth-round exit at a clay tournament in Rome earned roughly what a dockworker made in a month. Agents were unregulated. Managers took cuts nobody disclosed. The infrastructure for corruption was already built. It just needed a reason to activate. That reason arrived in the spring of 1991. A quarterfinal at a mid-tier ATP event disappeared from the record books in a way you'd never notice unless you were looking. The player who retired, ranked 47 in the world that week, walked off court after 7 games. The official sheet listed it as a right shoulder injury. Except 3 people in that tournament's medical staff have since said, separately and without coordination, that he never came to see them. Not before the match, not after. The shoulder complaint appears nowhere in the tournament's medical log for that day. The betting patterns are what cracked it open, but only briefly. A cluster of accounts, all routed through a London-based bookmaker operating in a legal gray area, had laid significant money against the retirement occurring before set 2. Before the match started. That's not a bet on who wins. That's a bet on how the match ends. The bookmaker flagged it internally, passed it up the chain. 2 weeks later, the file came back with a single notation: insufficient evidence to escalate. No investigation was opened. No player was contacted. 35 years ago, that was the end of it. Here's what doesn't fit. The player was not struggling financially. He had a sponsorship contract, modest but real. He was seated at the event. A quarterfinal run would have pushed him inside the top 40 for the first time in his career. The standard theory is desperation. Desperate players take money to lose, but this player had nothing obvious to be desperate about, which means one of 2 things is true. Either he was coerced, or the fix wasn't his idea at all, and he was the instrument, not the architect. That distinction matters, because it changes who you're looking for. But that's not the part they buried. The ITF received a second report in 1993, not about the match, about the structure behind it. An internal compliance officer, a name that has never appeared in any published account, compiled a dossier on a network of fixers operating across 12 ATP events between 1989 and 1992. The dossier named the London bookmaker. It named 2 others. It named a fixer based in Vienna who acted as intermediary between organized money and players under pressure the dossier didn't fully explain. It named 9 players. Active players, most ranked between 40 and 120. The middle tier, invisible enough to avoid scrutiny, ranked high enough to appear in marquee draws. The dossier was presented to a 3-person ITF panel in early 1994. The panel met twice. The minutes of both meetings were classified as internal governance documents, a designation that, under ITF rules at the time, meant no external disclosure requirement. The compliance officer left the organization later that year. The 9 players' names have never been published. The Vienna fixer has never appeared in any court record. The Tennis Integrity Unit, the body built to handle exactly this, wasn't created until 2008, 14 years after that panel met. 14 years during which the sport publicly maintained it had no systemic integrity problem. They didn't bury the match, they buried the map. 7 of those 9 players went on to coach. Some coached juniors. Some of those juniors are ranked today. The sport never went back. When the TIU was finally created, its mandate covered conduct from that point forward. The 1994 panel's work was not transferred. The dossier, if it still exists, sits somewhere in an ITF archive that has never been subject to an independent audit. What you were told was that professional tennis cleaned itself up after 2008. What the compliance officer's dossier suggested is that it was never clean to begin with, and the people who knew that made a deliberate choice to let the statute of limitations do the work for them. The players who fixed in 1991 were never suspended, never fined, never named. 35 years, and the record still says, retirement, right shoulder, day 1 of the second week. The one detail nobody has answered: the dossier named a 9th player. 8 of the 9 have been tentatively identified by researchers who have worked this story for years. The 9th hasn't. Someone who competed at the top of this sport in the 90s may still be inside the game right now. You've watched them. You just don't know it yet.